This from Gail on YouTube. With all but one of the Serie A teams eliminated from the Champions League, is there a wider issue in Italian football that needs addressing? We were talking about this on OTC yesterday.
Well, Italians think so. And as I said, I think there's a context for that as well. I think Italian football's self-image is a little fragile at the moment, is fair to say. But I think as well, when you see where it is in terms of the transfer market, I guess you feel in recent years that Serie A would love to catch up with the Premier League, love to put itself in a position where it can compete with the Premier League, but doesn't really know where to start. So you've seen a few little moves towards that. So having the games directly after Christmas, for example, so England doesn't get a clear run of Boxing Day and the days after that, which I'm not convinced is something that's doing Italian football a massive favour, actually. I wonder if they'd be better going back to a winter break, and maybe this is of substance, and maybe that is something, David, that would stand them in better stead when it comes to the Champions League.
Yeah, I think it could absolutely help. Anything to take pressure off, I think, very slim squads. You look at a lot of the top teams in Italy, their first 11s, decent to good. Don't think there's anyone great there. And then you look at the benches and everything after, and just the squads in general. There's a lot of pressure on there. And yeah, I think this is something that could help because we allow their first 11 to be fresher more often.
That is a really good point, actually. I think if you look at the injuries that have hit a lot of teams, and I obviously thinking of particularly Napoli, when funnily enough, Napoli weren't involved in the Club World Cup, which I think is quite interesting. Yeah. And I'm not saying that a winter break would have cured all that, but it wouldn't have done any harm to it, would it? Now, I think really that's something that we have to look at. And when you think of how much the balance of power in European football has changed in the last 20 years, the idea that Serie A should be a competitor of the Premier League is something that Serie A probably needs to get over. I don't think you can really.
It should pitch itself as something else.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, is there a wider issue, though, David, with Italian football? Well, when Gail asks the question, she's wondering whether there are issues that aren't being addressed. So it's easy to say, look, you can't compete with the Premier League in terms of results or success at the moment. But
not what shouldn't you do, but what should you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
Okay, well, one thing that doesn't cost any money, well, it costs a little bit of money, but not a huge amount, is your youth academies. I don't think enough chances are given to young Italian players. A lot of the best ones that come through very young end up going abroad. Alessandro Del Piero made a great point that, Dortmund have gone up against Atalanta, and they've got 2 young Italian players born in 2008 in their teams. Italian teams, the Atalantas, Juves, all the big teams, there's not many getting chances there. They feel like they have to go elsewhere for those opportunities, other academies. That's probably going to continue to happen because they aren't getting the chances, simply put.
We talked about Atalanta being a team that built on its academy in the past. Do you think a couple of, we know that, say, Milan and Juventus, funnily enough, they've tried to move nearer towards this with the new gen thing that they're doing, haven't they? And we've seen young players come through at Juventus. You've seen Batisaghi come through at Milan, for example. So maybe we're waiting for the effects of this to work, and at the moment we shouldn't really be making any judgment on it. But do you reckon there's a place for, say, a couple of lower ranking clubs to pitch themselves as teams that develop young players?
Absolutely, 100%. There is that. It would be good for young players know there's a certain system and team that they could go to where they know their style, they know the environment that they're in, and have a platform to success there. But I think it's on the big teams as well to give opportunities as well. You look at the let's say the top of the Premier League and such, there's young players getting a chance at every club. At Arsenal, they are, Liverpool, Chelsea, somewhat, Man United. They're all getting, young players are getting chances there who have come through. Newcastle's another as well. So there's different clubs doing that. I just don't think the Milans and Romas and Juves are really doing that. The young players are sold onto profit. They're loaned out to various different places. I'm not too sure how much thought goes on into the loans other than just get the minutes, rather than more deeper thinking, whether there's a platform for these individuals. So I think that's a big problem as well. There's a constant argument in Italy about too many foreigners in teams as well, which is blocking the pathway to younger players. So there's that as well. That continues to rear its head, won't go away, especially that becomes a bigger issue when the national team is floundering and when there's concerns over whether they're getting to big tournaments consistently. Oh, we haven't got the core of players between 22 to 26 anymore. England has. England's got 6 or 7 for every single position. Italy have not got that.
And these are all existential issues that clearly have a part to play. I wonder if there aren't some issues about the experience of football in
Stadia is definitely one.
Stadia.
There's a lot of creaking old Italian stadiums there, updated for Italia 90, had touch-up work done since then. And there's not many clubs who have moved to new stadiums. Juventus are going to be an outlier, the way that they write a big check at the end of the season, kind of write things off. And a lot of the clubs aren't in that position that they can do that. Juventus very much, several years ago now, looked at the state of Italian football and said, we need to make ourselves an outlier and get away from that. They brought in Ronaldo. They changed their club badge. They looked into commercializing the brand of Juventus a bit more. We all know about the Super League as well. I disagree with a lot of those things that I've just mentioned, by the way, changing badges and this commercialization, absolutely. But they made efforts to get out of that rut that Italian football is in and make themselves a European team and not an Italian team.
I think the main part of that, the bottom line, is to own their own stadium. That is the bottom line. If you're talking about closing financial gaps, if you're talking about giving yourself sustainable means, and obviously, Italian planning law has a huge influence on that. You look at Milan and Inter looking to move, the thorniness of redeveloping or moving on from San Siro has gone on forever. The new Roma stadium and getting the sign-off for that has gone on forever. You're looking at Lazio, who are trying to redevelop the Stadio Flaminio in Rome and go on from there, and there's been a bit of pushback. It just takes so long to do anything. Now, if we're looking at like a point, say, I know people don't want to hear this after a week where you've had big Serie A teams eliminated from the Champions League, but I think stuff is starting to happen, but it takes time to work. I think that's certainly the case with the young players. I think that Milan and Juventus in particular are moving in the right direction. You're seeing a few players coming through at Roma as well, which I think are good things. But in terms of the stadiums, I think let's revisit this in 10 years' time. See where Italian teams are then. And if you will have Italian clubs with much greater means, if you have Lazio and Roma, for example, in slightly smaller stadiums, but that are facilities that you can use for lots of events that like wash their own face, to put it in a sort of corporate term, that actually make the club money rather than just cost them millions of euros in rent a year in these sort of dwindling facilities. And I say that as someone who absolutely loves the Olimpico, by the way.
I love the old stadiums. The last stadium in Italy I went to was Genoa's, and I loved it. Loved it. Look, I'm a bit of a legacy fan anyway, so I'm hung up on nostalgia and such like that. And I love the design of it. I love the feel of it. It was everything that the Premier League stadiums isn't now. Shiny, glossy, sanitized. And there was a great feeling about those stadiums when you're there.
I guess the question is, though, can you compete in the modern world with that, though? It's like San Siro, to me, still feels like a quasi-religious experience.
Yeah.
And it's a relic.
And that's one of the major stadiums as well. And And they probably can't compete, and you decide that. And I tell you what, it would be interesting to do a full fan survey of Serie A fans and saying, are you happy? Would you like to just keep those stadiums and just keep your team, like, and just know you can support your team in those stadiums without moving on to the UVA model? I tell you what, I bet you'd be surprised. A lot of them would accept just going, yeah, so what? If we can't compete with the Premier League, I've got my old stadium to go to, and I've still got my mates around me. And a lot of them will value that over, being in the big boom and lights of the Champions League and such.
I think you'd agree, Gail. That was fully answered in more ways than one. This question from Morant on email. Following the events that occurred at the Bernabeu on Wednesday night, does Spanish football have a racism problem, David?
It does, but who doesn't? I think Spain's got a very high profile problem because of the incidents, what's happened with Vinicius Jr. over recent years. But what's been happening in the Premier League recently? We're going to be England, and I think a lot of the time, and this is always a perception that I got in Spain, what they think of the English. They think that the English look down on a lot of people and say, oh, you need to be like us, you need to be better, we've got this right, and what have you. But every now and then, the mask kind of slips from England, and they'll have their troubles. There must have been 3 or 4 players just this week being racially abused. I know one of our Sunderland player, Romain Mundle, we put out a statement about that he was racially abused. I think it was online. I think a lot of it is online. It is. But every country has got it. But Spain's is particularly in the limelight because of what's happened to Vinny and how Vinny has put it out there. And I think that's what's unsettled a lot of people. They would prefer a little club statement, a few things said about, oh, it's wrong. But Vinny's put it out there and he said, this is going on. This is every stadium I go to. It's happening every single week. And I'm going to confront it. I'm not going to take it lying down. I'm not going to do it in the way that Dani Alves did when he was racially abused at Villarreal. Remember there was a famous, he ate the banana that was thrown at him. And it became a thing where a lot of players were posing with bananas and eating the bananas in moments of solidarity with him. Vinny didn't want to go down that route. He said, I want to call it out. I want these people banned from stadiums. I don't ever want to see them in a football stadium again. And I think that's unsettled a lot of people as well and really brought home a big cultural issue that Spain has. But again, it is in England. It is in Italy. It's in Portugal. It's everywhere. But Spain absolutely has its problems, to answer the question.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? That, again, people don't want to hear this, but you are never going to completely eradicate racism in stadiums, just as you'll never completely eradicate it in society. Where I think English football has been able to hold its head up is not to say that racism doesn't exist in England, but it's always been dealt with quite swiftly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a new challenge for English football in recent years, and I think particularly post-COVID, has been a level of behaviour in stadiums that has been worse than it has been for a generation. And it's been mainly isolated incidents, but it's still like unacceptable stuff that basically people at work or in any walk of life shouldn't have to put up with. I think what's actually gently encouraging about what's happened in Spain this week, of course, we're talking about the supporter getting thrown out for making a Nazi salute. I have to say, what happened at the Bernabeu at the Real Madrid game this week made me feel optimistic for the future of Spanish football in stands for the first time in a while. Because it didn't feel to me like Real Madrid made excuses about it. Like, they had that massive banner saying no to racism at the start, obviously in response to what happened to Vinicius in the first leg. This is quite rare for Spanish football to say this is a problem and we're going to deal with it. Because, I mean, part of it is due to Spanish society. You know, there are less people of colour in Spanish society generally, so there has really not been the impetus for people to deal with it. But here, this was the first time that Spanish football had to look in the mirror a little bit, and Real Madrid had to look in the mirror a little bit and said, actually, this is our boy and we've got to protect him.
Yeah.
And Carlo Ancelotti's not there to do that anymore. And Carlo Ancelotti did all of the dadding, so Real Madrid didn't have to before. And this time, they've faced it, they've dealt with it. And when this guy came out, there was none of the, he's not a real Real Madrid supporter or any of these usual epithets. It's like, right, we're going to ban this guy for life.
And that's what should happen. Ultimately, it's bans for life. That's how you go at this problem. And obviously,
but it's been too easy for Real Madrid to duck it before, and Spanish football to duck it before.
Of course,
and
but the reason
Spanish football fans to duck it, because I see when you make the comparison with England, I remember very clearly how things changed when other supporters around the incident decided not to tolerate it.
Yeah.
Because there was a time in English football where you'd get groups of people chanting racist epithets. Now, everybody around you thinking, no, I'm not having that. Has that come about in Spain? Has the Spanish football supporter got to the stage where they're not only on Vinny's side morally, but also vocally?
I wouldn't say... It's a really difficult one, because Real Madrid did something interesting about 11, 13 years ago where they threw out their main ultras group as well. They had quite significant neo-Nazi sort of elements in it, extreme right elements in it. Florentino Perez threw them out. They brought in new ultras who were kind of hand-picked. And interestingly, one of the incidents outside the Real Madrid Benfica game last night was a lot of Cara El Sol being sung, an old Franco song, and what have you. And that was the supporters who had been thrown out the stadium. So the old ultra group, they still turn up outside the stadium, try and start a bit of hype sort of thing, and still turn up, but they can't come in the stadium as a group with their flags and such like that. But they can come in individually, and that's another matter. So that still does go on and happen. I just think generally, around Spain, you will get individuals still saying things. I'm not too sure they're at the stage of being called out in stadiums. I really don't. And Andy said it's a cultural thing. And the Spanish are very, very protective over their culture and their ways, and they don't want to be told what to do or how to act. I always remember a conversation I had with somebody who was in Spain about bullfighting. And I said it was barbaric. And I was like, I can't believe you still do this. What the hell is this? And they goes, but it's our culture, it's our country, and everything like that. And we had a good discussion about it like that, and as an Englishman, you can't come over and tell us what to do and things like that. And that's the nature of it, and that's how it is. It's very hard to get through, whether it be racism or bullfighting or anything there like that.
From Radbrad on Discord, were Paris FC right to replace Stéphane Gilly with Antoine Kombouaré? They sit only 6 points above the relegation zone. Is he the man to get them out of this situation?
I think he is the man to get them out of this situation. And I think really the appointment of Kombouaré, the getting rid of Gilly is maybe not the surprise. For a lot of people, bringing in Kombouaré is because this has been a highly financed project, especially in the context that French football is in at the moment. Paris FC have spent a lot of money on players, both last summer and in winter. They did not expect to be in a relegation fight. But I think they've done well here to deal with the reality rather than how they would actually like things to be. Because obviously with the Arno money and with Red Bull's sporting intelligence, they thought, okay, we've got a combination here. And it would have been easy for them to say, Kombouaré is, he's Laurent Allardyce or whatever. He's like, your typical relegation fighter. This will be the 5th time he's come into a Ligue 1 team mid-season to save them from the drop. And 3 of the previous 4, he's managed it. So he's got a 75% success rate. Kombouaré is an absolutely old school, takes no shit kind of guy who will just do the necessary. It won't be pretty. And there are a lot of people who are going in France, well, he's not. Where's the Red Bull thread? Why haven't they taken one of the Red Bull coaches who are available at the moment, like Marco Rosa or Adi Hutter? Because they don't want to get relegated. That's the only thing that really matters in the rest of this season. Don't go down. So whether it fits the model or not, get this guy. He'll make you stay up. He won't be a coach for the next 3.5 seasons, or probably not the next 1.5 seasons. But for now, he's the guy.
He'll end up doing adverts for food, won't he? Laurent. This from Giancarlo on X. It's election season for Barcelona, but as someone who's unfamiliar with the process, why does the Barcelona presidency matter so much to the club?
It matters so much because it kind of sets the tone and gives the plans for the next few years at the club, whether it be remodeling the stadium, what happens with the youth academy, and then, of course, things like signings. So Victor Font came second in the race last time Laporte won, and he's in there again. There's several other names. You've got one of the guys who said he's already initiated contacts to sign Harry Kane. There you go. They make these promises. You've got somebody else saying that Deco will be replaced as sporting director with someone whose name hasn't really been given. And then Messi is now an issue as well, because people want to know what his role is at the club, in the future. Understandably, he left the club under Laporta's reign. There's a couple of the guys saying that the first call will be Messi to see what he can do in the future for them. I'm not saying player, just what sort of role as ambassador or anything like that can he be in the future.
Is he the biggest unsaid in this presidential race?
Messi.
Because Laporta and him didn't leave it well, and Laporta's been forced to publicly acknowledge this. And David's right. It's like for the ultimate footballing Peter Pan, there has to be the right ending. And I think a lot of Barcelona fans instinctively feel that. It doesn't necessarily have to be him coming back and playing, does it? But it has to be something, doesn't it?
Yeah, there has to be some sort of role for him. And there has to be some sort of proper farewell and understanding of his legacy at the club there. So it's understandably a big factor. But look, the stadium's going to matter. La Masia, the youth academy, will always be an issue as well. Direction in terms of the sporting department, some people are happy with Deco, others are not. So these things matter because ultimately it shapes the club moving forward. And they've had some absolutely disastrous presidents. They've had some very good presidents as well. There's lots of things to think about there, and yeah, that's why it's important. It encounters what the club are going to do over the next few years.
This from Andreas56 Ben on Insta. Antoine Griezmann, remember him, has left Atlético Madrid before, but a move to Orlando City feels more permanent. If he goes, how will his legacy be viewed, given he never won a La Liga title with Atleti? I think this is a follow-on from the question about Lionel Messi. If he goes, what's his legacy going to be?
I'll let Andy take this one, and then because we love Grizzy, so we can.
Yeah, we do.
We'll do a special on Grizzy when he does leave European football, probably.
Yeah, you're speaking to the fan club here. I mean, look, I don't think in football you can look at a player and say he is solely responsible for a club winning or not winning. Like, he's been hanging on, despite the fact that his role has been diminished this season, and he knew his role would be diminished at the start of the season. He's not always a starter, although he often is the kindling to sort of get Atleti going still. He's still a little bit Diego Simeone on the pitch in terms of that sort of personality, but Atletico have moved on. They're very different now, and it's not desirable for him to start every week at this point. But there's definitely a sense that he hung on and took this diminished role because he thought, one last go at winning La Liga. Because, of course, he arrived the year after they won the La Liga the first time, and then he was off at Barcelona when they won it with Luis Suarez. So you kind of feel that there should be more of a return on his time there, because he has been one of the players who's actually absolutely marked the club. And not just because he's their record goal scorer of all time, actually, but because, David, he has embodied cholismo on the pitch, hasn't he?
He's embodied everything. And Atleti fans believe that Diego Simeone is the best coach in the history of club. Okay? Who was the best player in that era? It's Antoine Griezmann.
It's about that time when I ask both of you to recommend a game of the week for our listeners to watch over the weekend. And just as importantly, please, you can also suggest the food that you should be having with it. Andy, do you want to go first?
Yes, I will take De Klassiker because Dortmund versus Bayern is always a highlight of the Bundesliga season. As I said on Thursday's show, it would have been a little bit nicer if it was just 6-point gap rather than 8, which it currently is. But it always would have been a little bit of a placebo because this is not really a title race. You know, it's going to be Bayern's title. And actually, maybe because the pressure is not on Dortmund to, this is the moment where you properly get yourselves back in the title race, maybe that takes a little bit of the pressure off them. Although quite how they react to the events of this week and what went horribly wrong in Bergamo will be really, really interesting. So just how Dortmund do react will be fascinating to see. And Archie Winter and I will be unpacking all of this on Monday's OTC.
Can't wait. And so this is definitely not a 6-pointer.
It would have been this time last week, but yeah, it's not.
Borussia Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. That's on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. I think I know what's coming food-wise.
Well, look, I'm not going to string it out, but all I can think about at the moment is the halftime currywurst. Best in the northwest of Germany. You've got to mop up that sauce with some bread. Remember as well that the Signal Iduna Park, Westfalen, the Borussia Dortmund Stadium, does have the longest pick and mix in European football.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
For afterwards.
Why didn't you tell me that years ago, mate?
I thought you knew.
Thank you very much. So currywurst it is. David, what are you going for?
I'm going to the graveyard. There is Serie A. I'm going to find out if it's still alive.
Yes.
So I've been told this week it's dead. So I'm off to say.
You're one of the ones who told yourself it's dead. Mate.
Yeah, I know.
Could go and poke the patient with a cattle prod.
Exactly. So yes, let's hope that Roma, Juve on Saturday night, quarter to 8, resuscitates Serie A, brings life back into it. And we've got a good little Champions League race. We've got 6 teams competing for 3 spots. This is a key game in that run. Allegri thinks that it's going to take 74 points for the Champions League quarter. Capello thinks it's different and it's going to be fewer the way the teams are shaping up. So, and this is just a key game in that run, and we're going to have to see how tired Juve are after that real epic against Galatasaray.
They are naked
with 10 men.
Yeah, exactly, with 10 men
again.
Poor Lloyd Kelly. Poor Lloyd Kelly.
Yeah.
Of course, and then obviously Roma's in European action as well, and the Gasparini. They have designs on winning a European trophy. So this is going to be a really interesting one, I think, just to see where how both teams react to midweek in Europe, because they have this high stakes in Serie A still.
I'm glad you went for Serie A, because you normally would go for a Spanish tapas, wouldn't you?
I did.
You can't take tapas to Italy, can you?
Exactly. And also there's it's the Seville derby this weekend as well. So honestly, I'm going to get pelters for not choosing the Seville derby. But I've chosen it many times down the years and on OTC, and it is the best derby in European football. So also watch that if I'm cheeky.
But what are we going to eat with Roma versus Juventus?
We're going to go for focaccia and a nice bit of pesto to dip the bread in as well. So
and that's it?
That's it, yeah.
Against the tapas?
That's it.
You're still hungry after the pick
I'm giving you carbs,
after the currywurst.
Come on, just clean your teeth.
Thank you. Appreciate that.